The markets rip on better than expected earnings coming out of some of the tech companies and slower than or lower growth than what was originally expected. So is the bull market back, or are we just in a bear market rally once again? So let's jump in, take a look at what's going on. The Dow is up 1.61, S&P up 2%, NASDAQ up 2.5%, with Facebook leading the charge on earnings, beating expectations. They popped about 15% after hours yesterday when it was reported, and the market was waiting with bated breath for big tech. Across the board, it hasn't disappointed. So tech earnings were pretty good when a lot of people were expecting tech to really suffer, and the GDP came in 1.1% for growth for the first quarter, while the economists were expecting 2%. So that also leads into the narrative that the Fed is going to have to cut rates and stimulate the economy, with that debate still going on, and recession concerns. Some people are still concerned about recession. Some people are saying that everything's fine. The Fed is going to continue hiking. Obviously, at the next meeting in May, they're definitely going to hike 25 basis points, it looks like. They have not indicated anything otherwise. So we can expect 25 basis point rate hike. But they have indicated that that's potentially the last one, that they might be able to sit tight and wait for the effects of the hiking to work their way into the markets. The labor market is still strong. The economy has slowed a little bit, but it's still strong. The consumer's been hanging in there. And as we see with earnings, things are still looking good in the economy, which kind of leads the Fed's narrative of having room to be able to tighten and create a soft landing. So we'll just have to see how all this plays out. Let's take a look at the markets right here. The Dow making up for all those losses almost the last couple of days, still under the trend. NASDAQ made up for all the losses and then some, popping above this downtrend line here. We will see if it gets confirmation and can continue from there. On the NASDAQ, the S&P still below the trend, making up for those lost gains the last couple of days. And let's look at the VIX retreating once again. The Dixie kind of hanging out on support, the 2-year getting a little bounce, the 10-year getting a little bit of bounce, and capital rotation coming out of treasuries going into the markets, and then when the markets are down, comes out of the markets, goes into treasuries. Just risk on, risk off plays right there. Oil is continuing, found a little bounce here, but kind of working its way down. So let's take a look at Bitcoin now, with Bitcoin rejecting perfectly on that trend line, connecting the previous two April market peaks. So we'll have to see if Bitcoin can get above this trend line and continue on from here, as a lot of people are expecting Bitcoin to enter a new bull market, or even that Bitcoin has entered a new bull market. Let's go ahead and take a look at the Gaussian channel, see where we stand there. And on the weekly, here's Bitcoin on the Gaussian channel on the weekly, finding resistance at the top line of the Gaussian channel right now, but support on the midline. Generally, whenever Bitcoin loses the midline, it kind of retreats down to lower levels. When it finds support on the midline and breaks above the top of the channel, that's generally continuation, with the exception of the coronavirus pandemic when the market tanked. As I've said before, I believe we were on the bull market path at this point back in January of 2020, before all of the reports of coronavirus hit the United States. But previously, if you don't hold that midline of the Gaussian channel, you definitely go down below it. When you find support on it, it generally goes off to higher levels, with the exception of that one brief period during the pandemic there. Something else to take a look at is, time frames. You've heard the old sell in May and go away. So let's take a look at the stock market. Let's look at the S&P here. And you can see this price action since the peak has been going on for about, we're on the weekly here, it's about 68 weeks. So a little over a year that the market has been in this position. Here's April 2022. Here's April of this year. So let's go back and look at 2009, the last time we had any kind of a real bear market. And let's look at the peak of that market and go 68 weeks from there. That would put right at the bottom area from a time standpoint. The peak back then was October of 2007. And then here is May 2008 right here. So the whole sell in May and go away but it was downhill from that point on. And of course, that's when we had the banking failures. That's when we had, all of the issues in the housing market and all those things. Very different environment, very different climate. This happened very fast. Whereas there's a lot of uncertainty right now in terms of recession, in terms of bank issues, bank crisis, and in terms of bank failures. Speaking of which, let's get back on the daily. Let's take a look at First Republic. First Republic, as you can see, everybody's been looking at this chart from the other day when news came out that First Republic was failing. Caught a little bounce on the lows, but the Fed Treasury is not stepping in on this. So we'll have to see if that bank fails, gets taken over, what ends up happening. Usually that happens over the weekend. So we might see news come out this weekend or Friday at 5 o'clock is when they typically are going to close a bank. So we'll see tomorrow if First Republic goes down. A little bit of speculative trading in advance of that. But right now, that's what I'm watching. Let's take a look at Ethereum real quick. And here's Ethereum starting to catch a little bit of bounce after that little decline yesterday of liquidations that we saw. Pretty much all the crypto assets. Solana in consolidation mode could bounce back up to the range here. Previously about $30, somewhere in that range to $33 wouldn't be too unexpected for Solana to take a little pop over the weekend. Some of the altcoins might get a little bounce following Bitcoin's price action here. So these are the things I'm looking at. I will see you on the next video.